Everybody, Scott from Scott's Cheap Flights here. Great to be with you all on this Wednesday afternoon. Excited to talk about cheap flights, about travel, about the pandemic, whatever is on your mind, let's discuss. So drop your questions below or to the side. We're going to get to as many as we can. But first, I am here with my main man, my main ace, Julian. What's up, Julian?
Hello. Nothing too much. Pretty good day so far.
What's new over in New York City?
Absolutely nothing. No, I mean
Real
it's weather's been
curveball
pretty good.
question, huh?
Yeah, I know. No, it's been pretty good. It rained the past 2 days. That's really the most exciting thing that's happened, I think, the past 2 days. But other than that, it's been pretty good. How about you?
The air is breathable out here in Portland, and that's all I can ask for.
There you go.
While you are dropping your questions in below, and remember by SCF law, we have to take the first question no matter what. I wanted to let you all know about a promotion that we're running today. Is the last day for the 5 years of premium promo. It's one of the biggest sales we've ever done, where you can get a very special price on 5 years of premium for a discount of 25% off. It's just $183 total off of a discount of, I believe it would usually be $250 for that. For premium members, you can get 40% off, 5 years for just $147. So that sale ends tonight at midnight Pacific time. That's 3 a.m. if any of you East Coasters are staying up trying to get in at the last minute. But if you have been thinking about it, if you want to join us, for the long haul, we would love to have you. We're excited for this sale, and again, ends at midnight tonight. So we're going to post a link in the comment section for how to upgrade. We appreciate so many of you who have upgraded, who have taken advantage of this promo, and excited, hopefully a few more as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the questions. Julian, you want to kick us off here?
Yeah. Right before we do, I have to say, not that I'm tooting our own horn, but I think no one really does a deal for new people, limited members, and then also for the premium members. Usually it's like, oh, you've already signed up with us. Thanks. That's it. You're good. You don't really get anything beyond that. So this isn't planned. This isn't scripted. I'm just pretty impressed by that. So
That's exactly right. We want to make sure that we are showing our appreciation for folks who have been SCF premium members. We love you. We're so grateful. And that's why you're getting an even bigger discount. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. First question from our good friend, Allison.
Allison.
She says, hey, Scott and Julian, whenever Europe reopens to travel, would you recommend sticking to one country for trips? It seems like country hopping from the UK to the EU, or even within the EU, may be further away than single country travel. And then she's quickly updating us on her vaccine trial. She got the second shot of the Pfizer vaccine Saturday. Trial has been going well with side effects similar to the flu shot. So low-grade fever, sore arm, felt worn down for just about 48 hours. So thanks for the update, Allison.
Yeah, first of all, that is so cool. I love that we get this weekly update of how the vaccine trial is going from somebody in the know. Man, so cool. Love to hear it. Thank you for the update, Allison, and thank you for participating, for helping us, get this, get to a vaccine sooner. I just so appreciate everybody who's taking part in that. I tried to go volunteer myself, and they're not looking for people in Portland, and I was devastated, but I didn't take it personally. To your question about when Europe reopens to travel, should you stick to one country or be able to go to multiple ones? It's going to depend a little bit country to country. So the rules between going from sort of what's called continental Europe to, between continental Europe and the UK are going to be a little bit different than the rules from going within continental Europe. So say going from Belgium to the Netherlands to Germany, that is much, much more accessible typically. Those rules have been, initially they were kind of clamped down a little bit early in the pandemic. Now it's much more open and accessible to be able to travel between mainland Europe countries. And so I wouldn't see any at least based on today's kind of rules and circumstances, any reason why you should feel the need to stick to one country. The rules for the UK are typically going to be different than rules if you're just traveling in continental Europe. So that might be one to kind of look out for. But otherwise, if you've got a trip to Switzerland, no reason you shouldn't be able to pop down to Italy. Now, that's all based on, again, today's circumstances. It's definitely something to keep an eye on because, as has been the case with this pandemic, it is fast changing, and today's circumstances might not be tomorrow's circumstances. It is certainly possible that things could start to lock down again, in which case those kind of inter-country travels might be not as available tomorrow as they are today. Anything to add there, Julian?
No, I mean, I think that's a good call out. And probably a good call out for most things recently is today's advice is based off what we know today, what we know right now. Next week, if something new happens or we find out something else, our recommendations may change, our advice may change based off that. So I think that's always a really good call out with any answer, really.
Yeah, as the Animaniacs used to say, expect the unexpected.
There you go. You can't beat that. Our next question comes from Mario. Hey, Mario. He says, welcome back, guys. Thank you. My question for today is a bit weird, but I bought tickets for Japan for the end of the year, leaving out of Mexico City through an EU OTA, online travel agency, but I live in Texas. So what rules/laws apply to me if the flight is canceled, the EU, the Mexican, or the American ones? What a question. I love it.
So it depends a little. The first answers, by the way, thank you for, such a complicated and curveball question here.
Yeah.
The U.S. will only have authority here. There's only U.S. rules would only apply if your flight leaving out of Mexico City goes through the U.S. before it goes on to Japan. So I don't know the exact routing of your flight, but if it's a flight, let's say Mexico City to L.A. and then L.A. to Tokyo, then yes, U.S. rules would apply. And for instance, if the airline cancels your flight under U.S. law, you are owed the option of a cash refund, period. Now, none of this messing around with vouchers, none of this messing around with travel credit. If you want a cash refund, and the airline cancels or significantly changes your flight, then you can get that. But again, that's only if it's a U.S. flight. The different, that's a flight either to a U.S. airport or from a U.S. airport, even if it's on a foreign airline. The rules obviously are going to be different if it doesn't go through the U.S. If it's just, let's say, I'm actually not 100% sure if there's flights these days from Mexico City to Tokyo, but I know there used to be at one point. It's going to be different in that case, in which case the Mexican law would apply here and or Japanese rules. In general, if the airline cancels your flight, you should at the very least be able to get travel credit, flight credit, a voucher. Chances are you'll still be able to get a refund. And you also have protections to be aware of from your credit card, whatever credit card you paid with. They've generally been pretty good at being able to provide refunds when the airlines were digging their heels in. Because if you pay for a service or a flight or a product and you don't receive that service or flight or product, that's what the airline, or that's what the credit cards have that sort of protection for, and they'll be able to make you whole while they go fight with the airline for the money back. So I think you should be in pretty good shape. It might be a little bit more, let's say, arduous. You're going to have, because you booked through an OTA, you'll have a middleman there that you have to go through rather than dealing directly with the airline. It might take some extra calls. It might take some extra emails if that flight doesn't come to pass. But I still feel very good about your prospects of being able to get a refund if the flight is canceled.
Mario did update us and said the flight is direct.
Okay, so U.S. law would not apply in this situation. You would have to be relying on Mexican law, Japanese law. I don't unfortunately know off the top of my head how those handle flight refunds, and then also your credit card protections would apply here.
Yeah. All right. Next question is something that I'm wondering all the time. Glenn asks, considering the lockdown, when are we going to be able to see some $300 fares to Europe coming back online? Great question.
You know, this is a great question. I was actually just on a podcast this morning talking about what the sort of landscape of cheap flights look like. And there's kind of good news and bad news with how the pandemic has impacted airfares. The good news is that some of the most sought after and rare cheap flights have become abundant. And by sought after and rare, I mean the holiday flights around Christmas, New Year's, and the peak summer flights, June, July, August, ones that are typically very, very expensive. But during the pandemic, we have seen just a glut of cheap flights available over those peak travel periods for obvious reasons. Now, we've seen probably more Christmas and New Year's flights this year than we've seen in the past 5 years combined. So that's the good news with how the pandemic has impacted airfare. The bad news are these $300 fares to Europe being far, far less prevalent than they were this time a year ago. Now, why is that? The obvious reason and the correct reason is because there just aren't nearly as many airlines and aren't nearly as many planes flying those routes. There aren't zero. There are still some there's still, I think, 5 planes today flying between New York and Paris. But this time a year ago, there were dozens, if not 50 or more in a given day. And so the thing to remember is that the number one determinant of cheap flights on a particular route is just how much competition is there between airlines on that route. Right now, with so many fewer planes flying internationally and flying over to Europe, there's just less competition. And as a result, there's less opportunities for cheap flights. There's not zero. We're still seeing some, deals I would consider cheap. We've seen some nice ones, including summer 2021 over to Europe, that are certainly very, very good. But you're right. We've seen less of these kind of $300 fares that were just our bread and butter for 2019. Anything to add there, Julian?
No, I mean, I never really thought that it would be weird to take $300 round trip deals for granted. Especially, I mean, living in I live in New York, so JFK to Europe is sometimes $250 round trip. And I'm like, yeah, they're always there, they're always around. And now it's like, they're not as common. They're not. You can't really just search up any route to Europe and expect it to be less than $300, even $400 now. So what you're saying is true. They're definitely still there. They definitely still come around, but they are coming around less than we're used to, especially, as you said, in 2019. So
the good news is this is one of those things that I expect to kind of revert back to normal once a vaccine has been not only approved, but also distributed. And once travel kind of writ large starts to come back to normal, once they say like, oh, the earth is healing and we are the virus. Like one of those things that we're see of in the airfare industry healing is these $300 fares to Europe start to come back. But unfortunately, also those peak, winter holiday and summer flights starting to get much more expensive.
Yeah, that's the trade-off, I guess, for between 300 Europe fares and the peak holiday and peak summer. So we have some hellos. Hello from Hawaii, from Devin.
Hey, Devin.
From Devin. Mondra says hello from Dhaka.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah. Susan says, thanks, guys. As usual, you rock. Thank you so much.
Oh, appreciate that, Susan.
And then 2 more. Gabe says, thank you for all you guys do. We appreciate you. And then finally, Kathy says hello from Oregon. So,
hey, Kathy, I'm in Oregon too.
That is true. A quick question from, I love the name, Cray Ray. Are membership prices going up?
Not only are they not going up, they're actually going down. We, for any folks who just arrived, we are running a sale right now that ends tonight. Normally, if you were to pay annually for the next 5 years, it'd be about $250 for a membership for 5 years of SCF. But we're running a big sale. If you sign up for it's a 5-year promo. You're going to get that for a 25% discount if you're currently a limited member or a new member, or if you're a premium member, you're going to get that for a 40% discount. Again, this is one of the biggest sales we've ever run. Able to get a huge discount off of the normal membership price for SCF, to be able to kind of give your future self that gift of travel, that gift of cheap flights for when you're all excited to be able to travel again. And I'm super grateful for everybody who has signed up or excited to be for the future of cheap flights, the future of travel. And remember that sale ends tonight at midnight Pacific time. So if you're interested and want to take advantage of that, clock is ticking.
And on that note, Becky asks, do you have an app?
So we don't currently have an app. We run it just through email, and then we also have a it's called a web app. Listen, I'm an old head. I don't even know what the hell a web app is. Like, what's the difference between a web app and a website? Like, come on, what's the deal with? But no, we don't currently have a mobile app. It runs entirely through your email and through the Scotts Cheap Flights website. So you don't have to download anything extra or special right now. As soon as we find a great deal out of your home airport, we're going to email it directly to you, and that way you can find out about it before that deal disappears.
Yeah. Barry asks, right on to our next question. I have a friend in Australia who wants to join SEF when the country reopens. I mean, that sentence in itself, I would love a friend in Australia. Super cool. Do you post deals from international cities to the US or to other international cities?
So we don't. We focus just on flights departing out of the US. But one of the cool things that we started doing during the pandemic in the past couple months is we started offering domestic flights as well. Before we had just had those long haul flights available, not only international, but also deals to Hawaii and Alaska, places like that. Starting in July and now continuing permanently as a part of Scotts Cheap Flights, we are sending domestic flights as well. So being able to get a cheap flight to Austin or to Nashville, to Miami, even out here to lovely Portland, Oregon, those are the deals that we are searching for now to be able to help people travel, even when some of those international trips might have to, wait a few months until it's safe and comfortable to travel again.
Moving on to our next question. This is usually a question that I don't include during the Facebook Live because it's very specific. It's very individual. But I thought it was a very unique destination place. So just wanted to see first if you knew the answer, and that's it. So Carlina asks, how much will it be one way from Houston, Texas to Clovis, New Mexico for an adult and teenager?
Excellent question. Clovis, New Mexico is not a place that we have found any recent cheap flights to. Gosh, I should know off the top of my head how far Clovis is from either Albuquerque or El Paso. But I wouldn't expect that to be very expensive. It's not a super long flight. We're probably talking hour and a half at most. But one thing that is important to remember is that the price of a flight is not a sort of linear relationship to how far you fly. We often have it in our heads. We use this mental model like a road trip where, let's say you're driving from Houston to Clovis. The cost is just how many, tanks of gas do you need to fill up? And so a drive from Houston to Clovis is going to cost X price, whereas a drive from Houston to Dallas is going to be cheaper. It's not that way with flights. With flights, the cost, the airfare depends much, much, much more on the kind of supply and demand for that route, and specifically on the competition between airlines for that route. One of the things that's going to be tough about this being especially cheap is two things actually. One is that Houston is an airport where United Airlines has a monopoly on flights. They serve by far the most number of flights. And when there's a monopoly on flights, you don't have as much competition. Without that competition, you don't see as cheap of flights available. So that's knock number one. Knock number two is flying to Clovis is not a place where there's going to be a ton of demand. It sounds like a lovely place. I know there's some great fossils that were found in Clovis, but not a place where there's a ton of folks flying to. And so as a result, you're not going to see fares as cheap as if it was even flying somewhere much further. I can guarantee you flights from Houston to Los Angeles will be cheaper than flights from Houston to Clovis. So something to bear in mind. And you know, as you kind of do that search on what that will cost.
Sorry if you hear any background noise. As I told you, I do have a rabbit, and when rabbits get scared or upset, they start thumping really loud. And he just decided to go under the couch and thump very loud. So hopefully he's okay. One of the main reasons I chose that question was just also, you know, seeing if you know what's the closest airports to Clovis, and I think the takeaway here is you can't stump Scott.
Well, Daniel has provided, actually one of our similar flight experts has provided some great service here. Says that it is what's called an EAS airport. This means an essential air service airport. These are small airports throughout the country that get subsidized by federal taxpayers, federal budget that gives them more service. Otherwise, they might not be able to kind of make ends meet, or flights might be really expensive to somewhere like Clovis. It's got information on where they fly to Denver via Key Lime Air on a tiny charter jet. I've never even heard of this. That's wonderful. So the good news is because it's an EAS airport, that means the fares are going to be less expensive than they would be if they were just at market rate, the way, you know, a flight from Houston to Los Angeles will be. The bad news is almost all flights to EAS airports tend to still be very expensive. Even if they're cheaper than they would be without that federal subsidy, it's still going to be probably a pretty pricey flight, or pricier than you might expect given the proximity.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I just did a really quick check, and it's one of those things that you said, where travel is personal. Are you willing to drive, you know, a little more after you fly? Depends on, you know, the value you put between the two. Flights to Clovis seem to be averaging one way. We always send round trip deals, but one way looks to be about 120 to 140 within the next few months. But if you're willing, you know, Albuquerque, El Paso. Sorry, what'd you say?
That's from Houston to Clovis?
From Houston, yeah, from Houston to Clovis. But if you're willing to drive from, you know, Albuquerque, El Paso, even Oklahoma City, there you can find some one ways for the next few months in, you know, $40 to $60 range.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so it kind of comes down to, do you need to fly directly into Clovis? Do you want to visit Albuquerque for, you know, for a few hours and then head on over to Clovis? So got a few options there. Our next question comes from our very own Jamie Muller. She asks, thoughts on Tampa offering COVID testing in their airport now? Do you think more airports will follow soon? What a quality question.
Awesome question, Jamie. Appreciate you. So this is a great topic, because as Eagle-Eyed Scotch Cheap Flights members will know, a couple weeks ago we sent you an email, you know, in kind of giving travel advice, saying that one of the things that I think might be able to open up travel, and that I'm like most excited about, to be able to make travel safe and comfortable before a vaccine gets widely distributed, is this proliferation of rapid, cheap COVID testing. You know, companies have started to develop what are called, you know, rapid antigen tests. They take 15 minutes. It costs like $5 or $10. Sometimes can be as cheap as that, and be able to tell you almost instantaneously whether or not you're positive or negative, with very low false rates. And so what this can do is you can show up at the airport, be able to take that test, know that you are negative right there, and then be able to continue on with confidence that, you know, everybody around you is also hopefully taking that test and negative. Now, it's not required yet to fly in terms of most airports or most airlines. I don't know for sure whether that's going to happen. I wouldn't be shocked if this type of testing regime starts to come on board. But in the week or so since we sent that email, made that prediction, you've seen about a half a dozen different airports and a couple airlines start to offer these rapid tests to passengers in order to give them confidence of travel, that they can say, yeah, I can show up, take this, get my results quickly, rather than waiting, 5-7 days sometimes it might take to get the results from a regular coronavirus test, and be able to then continue on my travels with the confidence that I've been tested and I turned out negative. So in addition, there are some destinations that require a negative test upon arrival. Hawaii is one of the most kind of salient instances of this, where starting October 15th, they're going to allow people to travel to Hawaii without having to do a mandatory quarantine, as long as they have shown a negative COVID test in the past 72 hours before travel. Now, if you're taking a normal test that you might be risking, will I get my results in time? But these rapid tests, which they are going to accept, have said it's really important that you can get those quickly, instantaneously. Tampa is one of the airports that is starting to offer these. Oakland is another airport that has said that on all their Hawaii flights from Oakland, not only can you get this rapid test at the airport, it will be free. And so what that means is, let's say you're a family of 4 traveling, you might have to, it's possible you might have to pay $100, $150 for a normal coronavirus test per person, again, depending on insurance and everything else. You might not be able to get your results in time. You're hoping you get it within 72 hours. Or you can show up at the Oakland airport, family of 4, that's going to be $600 if you paid for the normal one, or you show up, you get that for free, you get the results almost instantaneously, and you continue on your Hawaiian vacation with confidence that you're all good. So it's, I think it has the potential to be a real open things up for travel and travel safely. And I'm excited to see that airports are starting to implement this. I hope more do soon.
Yeah, no, I think game changer is for sure what it could be. So excited to see, what that looks like going forward. Other airports, other destinations, or airlines allowing that to come through. Next question is from Kim. Kim asks, do you think travel on the holidays will be really busy due to the lower fares? And do you anticipate that airports or airlines will limit the amount of seats sold on the planes due to potentially busier travel time periods? And are any airlines still leaving middle seats open?
So some airlines are still leaving middle seats open. Delta, Southwest, I believe JetBlue have all announced they are. One of the things to be sure about, though, is that they have announced basically the end date of when that will continue through. I don't know those dates right off the top of my head, but that those, it's not for the next 12 months, it's for a certain time period. Now, it's always possible that will be extended. These things have been extended in the past, but they'll say what the current sort of deadline is for when those middle seats will continue to be blocked through. Do I anticipate kind of busy travel over the holidays? Maybe, but probably not nearly as much as it was last year. Again, I don't think anybody thinks that coronavirus is going to somehow have gone away by Christmas, New Year's. Look, that's only 3 months away. There's still going to be it's going to be a lot different this holidays than the last holidays. And so as a result, you're just going to see fewer and fewer people travel, even with these lower fares. Right now, today, the number of people who flew on an airplane is about 70% lower than it was this day a year ago. And while I don't know exactly what it's going to be come middle of December, late December, I think that's pretty reasonable to guess in that ballpark. If you watch the sort of travel numbers, it stayed in that sort of 65 to 75% reduction of travel numbers, honestly, for the past couple months. Maybe it'll get a little bit higher. Maybe you'll see it'll get up to 50% down. But even then, you're talking about half the number of travelers from last year compared to this year. And so while it might be a little bit busier over the holidays than it is for travel in October, early November, I would not count on it being super packed planes for holiday travel, even with these low fares.
Mm-hmm. Time for two more questions, Scott.
Let's do it.
All right. Mimi asks, I'm eager to get to France. Aren't we all? Should I make flights now for 2021 and hope for the best, or should I wait for the EU to open up to Americans? What is your reason for your recommendation?
I love this question. And I'm going to answer for myself personally, but I'm also going to kind of give you a couple things to think about. For myself personally, a couple weeks ago, I booked my first flight, my first international flight since the pandemic began. I'm going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, traveling to Spain in early spring, late winter of 2021, if it's possible, if it's available. And one of the reasons why I booked that is not only to lock in one of the really low, cheap flights that I found, but also because I know that by booking a flight for next year, I'm giving myself joy and happiness today. Like, not only am I excited about it, but I get to daydream, all these great places I'm going to go in Spain, all these good meals I'm going to have, all the cool, I don't know, Airbnbs I'm going to stay in, like all this cool stuff that is really just kind of theoretical before you book a flight. But after you book a flight, a trip is real. And at that point, you start to really kind of be able to tangibly get excited about the stuff you're going to do and see and eat and drink, that in a way that is just not quite as visceral before you actually have a flight booked. So for me, I'm booking that flight now. Obviously contingent on being able to find a good deal and something that works out with my schedule. But I figure, look, I can lock in a cheap flight now, be able to be excited about it for the next 6 months. If plans change, if I'm not able to go, if the flight gets canceled, if the restrictions are still in place, no worries. Airlines are offering free changes. I'll push it 3 months into the future. You're still protected by US law. If the flight gets canceled, you're owed a cash refund period. So I'm feeling confident basically that there's very little downside. And if I'm able to go, great. I'm super excited to be able to travel internationally again. So that's why I think the case for booking now, to give yourself that hope and joy and excitement, and to be able to take advantage when there is a good deal. For some folks, the kind of uncertainty, not knowing for certain if the EU is going to be allowing Americans, not, just having just a little bit more up in the air than usual, that might cause some folks consternation and a headache, and they'll feel just a lot of anxiety about that. And if that sounds more like how it would feel to you, then by all means, wait. I don't think there's anything that's saying, oh, you have to book your flight now. These fares will never be good again. No. One of the things I think Julian can probably attest to this as well, that I've learned about Scott's Cheap Flights in the past 5 years, is that there is no such thing as a once in a lifetime fare. Like, we find cheap flights all the damn time. And so even if you miss on this one, that's okay. There'll be a next one. So that's the way that I kind of would personally think about it. I'm curious to hear in other folks in the comments section, how do you think about booking those international flights to places that are close to Americans today? Is that something that appeals to you, or is that something that feels like it would be a little bit more worrisome?
Yeah, that's true. If whatever thoughts you guys may have, please drop them in the comments. We would love to look at them. Final question, Scott. This is from Sean Colungo, one of the coolest guys that I know. And he asks, has there been any trend of lower fares for first or business class due to COVID?
A little bit. We've certainly seen a few business class fares that we've sent out. It's not been our bread and butter to monitor business and first class fares in general. So I'm actually curious to hear what you think, Julian. The one thing I will say, though, is that as kind of a hobby on the side, I'm always curious about award availability. So for frequent flyer mile aficionados out there, what does award availability look like? And one thing I can absolutely say is that there has been a big increase in the number of available business class seats for those award redemptions, to be able to use your miles for a business class seat, that first class seat. It's usually, you have all these miles, but the actual seats might not be available. That is definitely changed during the pandemic, and they're far, far more plentiful today than they were this time a year ago. But as far as the fares, it's something that we haven't monitored super, super closely. Any thoughts there, Julian?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that looking at it here and there, and kind of looking through it, no, I don't think there's been any obvious trend. For example, for economy, we do see a trend of peak summer, peak holiday prices going down. We see a trend of our $300 Europe sales not coming along as much as possible, but there really haven't been that many changes or prices that have shown like, oh wow, first class, business class has lowered dramatically or has consistently lowered. So while I think when there are fares or when there are deals, that the deals might be a little lower than we've seen before, it's not something that we're seeing on a consistent basis where we're seeing like, oh yeah, for the past 6 months, first class, business class has been dropping on a consistent basis. So no trend, but we'll keep an eye out, and we do keep an eye out for business class fares, and we do send a few business class fares as well. So definitely something that we'll always keep in mind.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks for the questions. Super grateful for all of you who are here dropping in questions, giving us your thoughts. Remember, our 5-year promo sale ends at midnight tonight. We'll post a link in the comment section about that. Up to a 40% discount on the price of SCF. So we love you. We would love for you to be part of this. Julian, thank you as always. Always a pleasure. And we will see you all this time next week. Thank you, Carl. Appreciate your signing up. And everybody else who did, love to see a shout out. So thank you, everybody. Talk to you guys.